So with Packers training camp only a few weeks out, I wanted to give you guys my 53-man roster prediction. This is a pre-training camp version. I'll probably do another one before the actual roster comes out, before the season starts. But I wanted to do one today here to sort of just give my thoughts and sort of see where right now, I think lots of these players stand. Of course, when training camp comes around, we're going to get a much better idea at lots of these different battles at different positions. But this is sort of just my take before training camp, and we'll see how things, shift as we move into training camp and seeing different positional battles. First off, at quarterback, I'm going to say it's Jordan Love and Sean Clifford. I know that there's some debate as to, whether Michael Pratt could overtake Sean Clifford, and at this point, I'm just going with Clifford because he's been here another season. He has more experience, and so if I had to, choose one or the other, I'm just going with Clifford right now. But if Pratt comes into training camp preseason and balls out, then that could potentially shift. And so I'm saying Packers keep Love and Sean Clifford. At running back, I'm going the Packers have Josh Jacobs, Marshawn Lloyd, and A.J. Dillon. I think that if the Packers hadn't drafted Marshawn Lloyd, then I would say Emmanuel Wilson had a chance to be, on the roster. But with them drafting Marshawn Lloyd in the third round, I think, and, also bringing back A.J. Dillon, Brian Gutekunst made some comments in the past that he wants to have a kind of, big physical back in there as well. And so I think A.J. Dillon fits that mold, and the Packers, decided to bring him back. I do think Dillon and Emmanuel Wilson could, fight it out for that third spot, because if the Packers release Dillon, it wouldn't be a massive cap hit. But for now, I'm saying A.J. Dillon finishes it off there. Then at wide receiver, I'm going the Packers keep 6 here. Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Bo Melton, and Malik Heath, meaning Alex Magoo, Grant Dubose, Samori Toure, Julian Hicks, and Dimitri Stanley do not make the cut. And I feel like this was a pretty easy position because we saw all these receivers have success last year, even Bo Melton becoming the first Packers receiver to hit 100 yards, as well as Malik Heath had some nice games as well. Didn't have that first 100-yard game, but Malik Heath played well. I think that's going to be the 6. At tight end, I'm going 3. Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft, and Tyler Davis. I think that, the Packers drafting Kraft and Musgrave last season, it really set this tight end room up for, a long while. Then we got offensive line. Here's where it could get a little tricky. I'm going the Packers keep 10. They kept 11 last year. I'm going Rasheed Walker, Elton Jenkins, Josh Myers, Sean Ryan, Zach Tom, Jordan Morgan, Andre Dillard, Jacob Monk, Travis Glover, and Donovan Jennings. And I was debating here whether to keep Royce Newman around. And he, has struggled the past couple seasons. He has not been great. And with the Packers drafting 3 offensive linemen, bringing in Andre Dillard and Donovan Jennings, who I think got around $100,000 guaranteed as an undrafted player, I'm saying the Packers decide to move on from Royce Newman after training camp. And that's sort of my takeaway there. Then to defensive tackle, I'm going to keep 5. Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, TJ Slayton, Carl Brooks, Colby Wooden. Last year they kept 6, but there is a shift now to the 4-3 instead of the 3-4, so there's going to be less defensive tackles in there than maybe there were in the past. And I'm saying Jonathan Ford, Spencer Wade, if that's how you pronounce his name, and James Esther do not make the cut. Then defensive end, I'm going Rashawn Gary, Preston Smith, Lucas Van Ness, J.J. Enagbare, and Brenton Cox. I think that the Packers still, with Preston Smith, he is getting a little bit older, but he's still been playing well. Rashawn Gary, I think he's going to have a monster year. And hopefully we see Lucas Van Ness take a big step coming into his second season. Then at linebacker, I'm going Quay Walker, Adrian Cooper, Isaiah McDuffie, Tyrone Hopper, and Eric Wilson. So that is 5 there. And as I was going through these rankings, I was, at first I accidentally had on first look, I had like 58 players on the roster. So clearly I had to cut 5 off and had to slowly go to each position, figure out, okay, who am I going to let go? It was sort of complicated at times, but that was sort of the process. But I think that Eric Wilson has shown some nice things from time to time. And the Packers, of course, drafting Adrian Cooper and Tyrone Hopper, I think that, they're definitely locks on this roster as well. So that means the Packers do not keep on the 53-man roster Christian Welch, Christian Young, and Raylan Goforth. Now to cornerback. I'm saying the Packers keep 6 here. Jair Alexander, Eric Stokes, Keyshawn Nixon, Carrington Valentine, Corey Ballantyne, and Kalen King, Packers 7th round draft pick. I was debating whether or not to keep Kalen King on there. He is a 7th rounder. And there's another position I'll talk about in a second where I thought about having 2 instead of 1. But with Kalen King, at one point a year prior, he was seen as a potential first-round pick. He had a really bad season after that, and that's why he dropped all the way to the 7th round. But I think because he at one point was seen as that kind of player, that there's some upside there. And so I think that if the Packers didn't, put him on their 53-man roster, there's a chance that someone else would come in and sign him. So I'm saying they keep him as the 6th cornerback. And then Corey Ballantyne was brought back on a really cheap deal, and I think the Packers like him. He started 6 games last year. He's some nice depth that he may not be a great corner, but I think he can do enough for you if you have some injuries and need some help there. Now safety. I got the Packers keeping 5. Xavier McKinney, Javon Bullard, Anthony Johnson Jr., Evan Williams, and Keaton Oladapo, meaning Zane Anderson, Tyler Coyle, Benny Sapp III do not make the cut. And this Packers safety room is probably the room where we've seen the biggest shift with, no longer having Darnell Savage, Rudy Ford, Jonathan Owens. Really the only guy here on the 53-man roster from last year would be Anthony Johnson Jr., who was a 7th rounder last year. And so I think we're going to see much better play here, with, of course, with Xavier McKinney coming in. I think Javon Bullard will probably become the 2nd starter next to Xavier McKinney once training camp is over. I think he'll push his way through there. And then the Packers drafted, 2 other safeties outside of Bullard, and Evan Williams and Keaton Oladapo. So I am much more confident in this Packers safety room than I honestly have been in a while and in the past couple seasons. Now to special teams. We got kicker. Here's where it was getting a little complicated for me as I was trying to figure it out in my mind. We know there's a competition going on here with Anders Carlson. Greg Joseph brought in veteran kicker from Minnesota. And then recently, the Packers brought in James Turner. And I was curious, how often NFL teams have kept 2 kickers on the roster. And it looks like teams do it from time to time. But on the one hand, it would be nice not to have to keep 2 kickers because that means that, you're weaker at another position. But I ended up keeping 1 for now. And I did Anders Carlson just because there were some other positions, some other players I wanted to keep in there. Like I was talking about Kalen King. I could have, taken off Kalen King, put in Greg Joseph. But I think that by the time training camp is over, we should have a clear idea of who the kicker is. I do wonder if Gutekunst would want to keep 2 kickers on the roster because let's say Anders Carlson wins a job, but then comes into the season and in 4 games in, you're like, he's not the guy. Maybe you want to have Greg Joseph there. I don't know if he'd be willing to do that. So that's something that I may change my mind on. But for now, it's Anders Carlson. I just think that the Packers drafted him. I think the best case scenario in their mind is their draft pick coming through and, reaching that next step instead of having to move on from him because, when you draft a player and you have to move on from him, it does, sort of, take away from what you did in that draft. And you'd rather the guy you drafted find success there because you really, you went after him. So I'm going to go with that for now. Then punter, there's only Daniel Whalen, so he gets the job there. And then long snapper, I'm going Peter Bowden. He was brought in this offseason as an undrafted player, and he was ranked, I think it's like one of the only long snappers by The Athletic, Dane Brugler, and he seems to be a solid long snapper, so I'm going to say he beats out Matt Orzech. So those are my thoughts. That's it for now. We'll see. Training camp will probably change my mind on some of these things. We'll see some more battles and see who rises to the top. And so I'll probably do another one of these after, probably maybe during training camp, maybe near the end when we really get close to the 53-man roster actually, coming to fruition. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you want more Packers content, feel free to subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time.